Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the CARES Act Relief Funding Team, our first training, our first a series of training. We have a full agenda for you all today, and I appreciate you all joining us. It has been a very interesting month. I wish it has flown by like a week, but we are officially at April 14th today, and on March 15th, 2020 is when the governor officially announced that schools would be closed for a week to prepare for distance learning. And then on that following Thursday, he closed our school buildings indefinitely, but expected that online learning or distance learning resume no later than April 1st. And so since that time, it's been 4 weeks of very fast and furious information that's been flying at state education agencies like DPI and local school districts like all of you are coming from today. So we, as you know, on March 27th, President Trump signed into law the second package of relief coming from Congress, and that package has been dubbed the CARES Act. The CARES Act provided a significant amount of money to K-12 education. In fact, $13 billion was dedicated to K-12 education. That provided money to states based on a Title I formula funding, Title I funding formula. That was a partisan agreement that occurred out in Washington, D.C. There was a high expectation that the schools with the most need, historically the most need, i.e. our Title I schools, would receive the funding that they needed to overcome and replenish the sources that and or revenue that was lost to our school districts during this COVID-19 event. So with that, of the $13 billion, North Dakota will be receiving approximately $33.3 million. A large chunk of that, a large portion of that will be delivered out to our school districts using the Title I funding formula. So the biggest chunk of that $33.3 million will be delivered out to our schools based on that formula. We will talk about some specifics today that will help us better understand that. The question that's been asked of me most frequently, and this is Superintendent Basler, by the way, but I would assume this time you probably all recognize my voice. But the biggest question that's been asked of me during this time since March 27th up until today is when can we expect funding? I had honestly anticipated that we would have received the application, North Dakota Department of Public Instruction would have received the application by now. I'm still optimistic that DPI will receive the application from the U.S. Education Department this week sometime. But to be technical about it and to be clear, here's what we know we can expect based on the law that was passed by Congress. Secretary DeVos had 30 days to provide guidelines and applications to states. So from the date that was signed into law. So from March 27th, Secretary DeVos has 30 days to get us the guidance and the application to DPI in North Dakota. So again, we hope that it will be this week that we receive that guidance, and we hope that we can have that application in hand before this week closes out. North Dakota DPI did not sit around waiting for this guidance to be written for us to begin our work. Immediately after the president signed the CARES Act into law, the department put together a group of people that are preparing an application. We cannot distribute that application for our North Dakota schools until we receive the official guidance from U.S. Education Department. But I will promise you this, and I will tell you this, that the guidelines and the application that we are developing for our North Dakota schools is swift, it's efficient, and it is not erroneous with bureaucratic red tape. So as soon as we receive our application from the Department of Ed, we will have swift turnaround, submit that application as we have done with all of our other waiver opportunities for North Dakota, submit that, return that to the Department of Ed, and get the money to us as quickly as possible, and in turn, get those application forms out to you and the money delivered out to you as soon as possible. That is my promise and my commitment to you. You will not be seeing a overcomplicated, overly bureaucratic, erroneous reporting system in order to receive these CARES dollars. You may also know from some of the organizations and groups that you belong to that the CARES Act included funding that was given directly to the governor's office for K-12 education. The last report that I saw last evening about 6 o'clock was that the governor's office in North Dakota will be receiving approximately $5.8 million for state level activity. DPI, state education agencies, will also be receiving about $3.3 million for state level activity and organization as well. So those two funding sources are separate. You can expect that you will be hearing something, I would imagine, soon from the governor's office. But again, with all that Governor Burgum is dealing with still fighting the virus of COVID-19, I'm not sure when you might be able to see that. But you can, as you've seen throughout this whole COVID-19 event, there is great collaboration, cooperation, and partnership that is occurring between my office of the Department of Public Instruction and State Superintendent Office and the Governor's Office. And so you can continue to see that conversation occurring. But I wanted to update you a little bit on that. One thing that I want to point out to you all is that Assistant Superintendent Maskey will be providing some very specific guidelines and opportunities for use for the COVID-19 dollars. I want to underscore the COVID-19 CARES Act was provided funding to K-12 education, not as a stimulus package, but as a relief funding package. So although there are some ideas that you maybe have an opportunity to use your COVID funding for augment and supplement some of our distance learning, some of our professional development opportunities. But I also want to share with you today that I believe that some of our school districts will be experiencing additional costs as a result of the COVID-19 response that they've had to provide to their students, teachers, and families. They may also have some areas where there have been revenue losses and revenue shortages. I want to remind everyone that this is a very appropriate use of the CARES Act funding relief that we'll be talking about in a few moments. And I specifically want to address one issue at this point in time, and that has to do with our transportation dollars. One of the very first questions posed to my office that we have been working diligently on is, what about the transportation funding? Because for all intents and purposes, students stopped getting on school buses March 13th. And as most of you are aware, the transportation formula involves rides and riders in order for transportation funding for the next year, upcoming year, 2021 school year. So that was the issue that we worked diligently on with our legislative body, with our governor's office, and with the Attorney General as we went through possible solutions and alternatives. So I want to update you today on that often asked question. So as much as I wanted to be able to deliver a solution to you all on that to provide some security and certainty for the upcoming school year of the 2021 school year, I want to share with you that several options were earnestly explored to make available a prorated transportation report. Unfortunately, what we have learned is the governor does not have the executive order authority to rewrite legislative language or language in state agency budget bills, including the state budget bill of the Department of Public Instruction. Further exploration determined the authority does not exist within the interim legislative budget section either, or the emergency commission that meets between sessions. The governor can only suspend existing North Dakota Century Code. The governor can only suspend existing North Dakota Century Code. He cannot rewrite legislative language. Therefore, when school districts are completing the 2019-20 transportation report, districts should plan to report miles and rides for transportation routes through March 13, 2020. Miles or rides cannot be reported while distance learning replaced traditional instruction. There will be an opportunity during the 2021 legislative session to pursue emergency language to distribute the portion of the transportation funding that is unable to be sent to school districts due to COVID-19. And districts may receive CARES Act relief funding that also can be used to replace the lost revenue from decreased transportation reimbursement from the state. So I know there may be a lot of questions about this. I will be open and entertaining questions. I will be providing the same information at my 3 p.m. briefing today, but I wanted to share it with all of you first as you work through the opportunities to utilize and leverage the CARES Act relief funding that will be coming to you as soon as possible. So with that, I want to thank all of you for the work that you are doing in your districts, for your students, their families, and your teachers. I have continually received comment after comment, whether they be passing by and someone with my face mask in a grocery store recognizes me anyway and pulls me aside and tells me the heroic stories of what their teachers are doing and their schools are doing. In an elevator this morning, I was again met with comments from people thanking me for all of the work that our teachers are doing for the students and families out in our schools across the state. I know the budgeting, the uncertainty of when schools will open, if our buildings will open again this fall, and all of the waters of uncharted territories that you're navigating. I couldn't be more proud to be from North Dakota and be part of such a dedicated group. Just read an update this morning that schools across the country, Philadelphia has yet to begin online instruction. I was visiting with my former colleague, Denise Juneau, over the weekend. Denise was the former state superintendent in Montana until she was term limited out, and she is now leading Spokane Public Schools in the heart and the epicenter of where COVID was discovered in the United States. They have yet to figure out how they can equitably begin learning for their students in Spokane. So thank you to you all. You are absolute heroes out there. We at the Department of Public Instruction have committed, this is our main mission, to remove the barriers and challenges that are in front of you, that you are facing as you uncover the needs of your students, your teachers, and your families out there. So please continue to let us know what we can do for you to remove those barriers. If government has a reason to exist, it is in times like these where we need to rise above all else and make sure that we're delivering to the local school districts what they need to serve our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Baesler. Good morning, everyone. This is Lori Matzke. Thank you for joining our first of many trainings that we will be providing on the CARES funding. Our intent today with this training is threefold. Number one, to provide some very general basic information about the CARES funding. Number two, to overview the web grants system, which we will be using to disseminate these funds. And number three, to provide information on private school requirements so that we can get started on that. So let's go ahead and begin. During the call, after each of these three sections, we will be answering any questions that you have. So please use the live event Q&A option to type your questions in. And again, we will stop periodically to address those questions. If you'll direct attention up to the screen, we're going to begin with just a few brief comments on some fiscal waivers that we have recently applied for. Superintendent Baesler applied for 6 waivers, which we formally received approval on April 6th. And so I just want to reiterate that the waivers are specifically for funds during the 2019-2020 school year only. And so this is going to provide some flexibility on our title programs, Title I, II, III, and IV, in case districts were not able to expend all those dollars due to the COVID situation. Now, fortunately, North Dakota also applied for waiver, and so we have not received information on that yet. However, if we are approved on our EdFlex waiver, that will grant Superintendent Basler the ability to carry all of these waiver options over into the 2021 school year and beyond. So we'll let you know once we receive approval on that. The most important thing on these 6 waivers that I wanted to reiterate today is a memorandum is forthcoming that is going to provide more details regarding how each of these waiver options may impact your district. And so look for a memorandum to be coming out very shortly. Going back to our agenda then, I'm just going to provide some brief information regarding the act before we move on to the next portion. So as Superintendent Basler stated, on March 27th, President Trump signed the CARES Act, which provided some relief funding for our K-12 education. North Dakota's estimated allocation is $33 million. 90% of those funds will go to LEAs. 10% will be retained by the department for state-level activities. As Superintendent Basler also stated, the funding vehicle to disseminate these funds uses the Title I formula. But I cannot stress strongly enough, these are not Title I funds. They just had to have a way to get the money to the states and for the states to distribute the funds to the LEAs. So once the funding hits the district, they are just COVID funds. They're relief dollars, and they really have nothing to do with Title I. So you can serve all schools, all students with these relief dollars. If you refer to the screen, it shows a use of funds document that has also been posted on our COVID-19 website. Basically, the use of funds falls into one of 2 categories. Number 1, COVID relief needs, and number 2, if you have all your relief needs met, then looking at maybe some supplemental activities under federal law. So first of all, you need to decide, do you have any COVID relief needs? Coordinating emergency services, ensuring preparedness and coordination, if you have to purchase some cleaning supplies, if you're seeing mental health issues because of the COVID situation, anything that, any need that you have that has specifically been brought on because of the COVID situation. And then the second category is that you can use these funds for any allowable activity under ESSA, so anything for Title I, II, III, and IV, anything under ESSA, anything under IDEA if you have special education needs, anything with Perkins, anything with the Homeless Assistance Act, and anything with adult education. So you have substantial local authority and discretion on how you utilize these funds. As Superintendent Basler mentioned, we are waiting to receive the SEA application so that we can apply for and receive funding under this CARES Act. We anticipate receiving this application hopefully this week. Simultaneously, we are developing the LEA application and guidance so that as soon as we can release this information to you. The anticipated grant for spending these dollars would be May 2020 through September 30th, 2021. So we'll have approximately a year and a half to spend these dollars. And we will also be providing additional information in the future because you will need to track these funds separately from your state and local funds, from your title funds. So in additional guidance forthcoming, we will be providing the coding on how to track these funds. As far as eligibility, again, the CARES Act uses the Title I formula to disseminate these funds to districts. And so there are approximately 16 districts that are ineligible for Title I funding. We are looking into ways of assisting these small 16 districts with possibly our state set aside or some additional funds, and more information that will be forthcoming. If you participate in a Title I cooperative agreement, you will get your share of the CARE funds. Your poverty students are included in your fiscal agent's numbers. And so just like when we give out Title I funds, Title I co-ops will receive a portion of that funding. One of the questions that we've been asked frequently is, are there any requirements to apply for this funding? And basically there are 3 requirements. Number 1, your district needs to be eligible, so it needs to be a Title I eligible school, just as we discussed. Number 2, you have to meet the private school equitable services requirement, which Ann Ellefson will be addressing here shortly. And number 3, there's an additional requirement that all districts receiving these funds shall, to the greatest extent practicable, continue to pay its employees and contractors during this period without disruptions or closures related to the coronavirus. So we've been told that within the application, the LEA application, there probably will need to be an assurance that you will address that you have been paying all your employees and contractors during the closure in order to receive these funds, or possibly an exception that a reasonable explanation on why you have been unable to do so. Fortunately, in North Dakota, the governor has kept our school districts whole. You are receiving your foundation aid funds, so we should have no problem assuring that we have continued paying all of our employees during this period of time. Timeline. So to the best of our knowledge, this is how we see these funds rolling out. Within the next 2 weeks, April 15th through April 22nd, we are anticipating receiving the state application. We will very quickly apply for this. It'll be our top priority once it hits our email, apply for this funding and receive approval. Then we are going to work with you to have all districts get registered for the web grant system, which Rebecca Pollard will be discussing in a minute, address all of the private school issues this week and next week, so that the minute we have the LEA application posted, you can actually begin working in it. So we're hoping to have the LEA application and guidance available to you in late April. Then by early May, districts can start applying for the funds. As Superintendent Baszler announced, we are going to try our best to have a very quick, easy, streamlined process so that we can very quickly get them approved and you can start spending the funds as well. We have created a special CARES Act funding link on our COVID-19 website. We have a Q&A that we add to frequently, a PowerPoint presentation, and all of the information from today's event on the private schools and web grants guidance will also be posted at that site. So please check that out. We are going to stop now and address any questions that we have received to date before moving on with Rebecca Pollard's presentation on web grants. So again, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please type them in the live event Q&A. Lisa, do we have any questions as of yet?
The first question is, what if we used our buses to deliver and pick up schoolwork?
Yes, as Superintendent Baszler announced when she was providing her opening comment, if you go to the use of funds document that we posted on the screen and that is on our website, about halfway down, that is an allowable use of these funds as far as transportation needs for child nutrition or instructional materials delivery. Now, the one caveat we need to mention is the U.S. Department of Ed has not yet formally announced whether we're going to be able to go back in time for pre-award costs, because your grant award will be dated when we approve your application, which will be early May. We are thinking that they are going to go back to probably the middle of March when all of this started and allow any expenses that you incurred from the middle of March going forward, but we have not received formal notification on that. So we will share that information as soon as it is received. But yes, transportation costs are allowable.
The next question is, I understand that we cannot report miles or rides for the 2019-2020 year as we are not running a bus. We are, however, running buses to deliver meals, homework, and pick up assignments. How can we report those miles?
And again, that was the same question, just worded a little differently than the first one. So again, we are fully in thinking that you will be able to use these COVID relief funds for those transportation needs.
The next question, when does the biennium begin to revisit the transportation funding?
As Superintendent Basler announced in her opening comments, this issue is going to be put on the agenda. They've already, stated that. This will be discussed during our legislative session, which begins in January of 2021. So in addition to being able to use the COVID funds, this issue will also be addressed during the legislative session.
Next question is, will Adam Tesher provide a revenue code for accounting purposes?
Yes, Adam Tesher and Jamie Mertz in our fiscal office will be providing the codes that you will use to when you spend these COVID dollars. And so we will be putting out additional guides very soon with the codes that you will use.
As a private school, we do not receive transportation funds. We are using our bus to deliver meals during COVID-19 closure. Can the funds be used to pay for transportation for meals delivered?
Again, private schools cannot receive these funds directly, but you can receive services by working with your district. Ann Ellison is going to be providing the private school information right after Rebecca Pollard. And so she will provide information on that coming up here soon.
Next question is, what if we have been giving half payments about a week and 2 days to bus route contractors while not running routes but are presenting paying full?
Again, you will have and again, we haven't seen the SEA application. This is just kind of what we're hearing, that you're going to have to, complete some kind of assurance that you are paying staff and paying your contractors. So there will be an opportunity, a text box on the application if you've been partially paying and your rationale for that. So as soon as we get more guidance, we will be sharing additional information. As I stated, this is the first of many trainings. As soon as we start getting more information from the U.S. Department of Ed, we will start sharing it with you.
If we get Title IV but not Title I, do we qualify for funds?
No, you need to qualify for Title I in order to receive these funds. And so again, just 16 very small districts that don't qualify for Title I services. We are intending to provide you the CARES grant. We're probably just going to use our set aside the DPI funds. So those 16 will still get a CARES grant, but you have to be eligible for one to receive a CARES Act allocation under the LEA portion.
Is there distribution of dollars through or to neglected and delinquent programs or strictly Title I formula?
We are only using Title I funds to disperse the funds, but again, once the funds hit the district, they have nothing to do with Title I. And so if you look under ESSA, you can use ESSA funds for neglected and delinquent students. That would be an allowable use of these dollars.
If the period will begin May 2020, what about from March through April 30th related to closure?
As I mentioned, we're waiting to get formal notification that they are going to allow pre-award costs. We believe at this time that will allow costs that started to be incurred by districts as of mid-March. So we're thinking that those costs from mid-March on will be allowed. We just can't confirm until we see it in writing from the U.S. Department of Ed.
Could pay be part of the issue?
No, I believe that we can follow, but most of in the guidance that we received, it would include teachers, administrators, counselors, social workers, nurses, professionals, bus drivers, custodians, service and administrative staff. But we can follow up on the issue of coaches.
If we had to purchase iPads with cellular data for those students who could not get internet service, is this an allowable use of funds?
Yes, allowable use of funds.
If we intent to apply for Title I in 2021, will we qualify?
So that has nothing to do with this process. Mertz, our fiscal director, needs to use the information that he has created Title I allocations for the 1920 school year. He has to use that same data for eligibility to run these estimated allocations under the CARES Act. So if you were eligible for 1920 school year, then you'll receive a grant.
Will we be able to use the funds for salaries and benefits activities as we would under Title I?
Yes, Title I is an allowable expense under ESSA, and as I mentioned, you can use these funds for any allowable activity under a variety of federal programs, including ESSA.
When will we see estimated allocations?
We are anticipating getting estimated allocations out this week. Within the next days, these allocations will be posted. Jamie Mertz is working on that as we speak.
Is the state willing to just use our 2019 miles on transportation and just use that data to determine our transportation payment in the 2021 school year?
I am not sure of the answer to that question. We will follow up with Superintendent Basler. We will post the answer to that question on our Q&A.
If we remove our title programs into Title I, will we still get our Title II and IV allocation? Will only get the Title I allocation amount?
Again, you're confusing these dollars with your regular title funds. Jamie Mertz is also working on running estimated allocations for next school year for Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. So those will be posted very soon. But that reaping process has nothing to do with the CARES Act funds. Again, basic information, if you're eligible for Title I, all but those 16, then you will receive a CARES Act allocation. Okay, and just a few here that I had submitted prior. Will the CARES Act funding include any carryover funds from this year? Again, same thing that we just you're confusing funds from this school year with these CARES funds. We have your title funds from this year, which you will probably have over, and the waivers that we applied for are going to allow you to carry over all of those dollars. Separate from that is the CARES funding, which although it uses the Title I formula, it is not Title I money. It is relief funding that you can use for any activity on that use of funds document. How will districts apply for the CARES funding? We will be using the new web grant system that DPI has in place, and Rebecca Pollard will be providing information on that next. Our pre-award costs allowable, again, we mentioned that. We're waiting to get official guidance, but we believe that pre-award costs will be allowable. If my free and reduced numbers have increased in recent months, will these numbers count towards determining my CARES allocation? The department needs to use October 2019 free and reduced numbers, the same numbers that we use to create allocation 1920 school year. Those would be the lunches that would be used for determining your CARES allocation. And the final are their reporting requirements associated with the CARES Act. We are not sure. We have not received any guidance from USDE yet. As we start receiving guidance, we will let you know. As Superintendent Basler announced, though, DPI will not be imposing any additional reports other than what is law. And so we will share that information as soon as it is available. Okay, that is all the questions we received on our first. We are going to move on to the next part of our training, which is on the web grant system. So I am going to pass it on to Rebecca Pollard in our fiscal office.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Well, I am very excited that we have decided to use the web grant system for the CARES Act relief applications, as well as claiming and receiving funds process, because if any of you are familiar with it, we've started with a few smaller grants within the system already, and it is working wonderfully. You take nothing from today, get registered for web grants. That's all I care that you learn about web grants today. Within the documents that were on your meeting invitation, there is a draft user guide. It's very draft. I'm very open to feedback on that, and I appreciate the suggestions you have. However, within it, there is a link to an unlisted YouTube video, meaning if you search for it, it doesn't exist, but it does exist if you have the link. Please share that draft manual with anyone within your school district or program, anybody that would be using the web grant system. That video is by far the best introduction to web grants to kind of tour you around. It's a lot of information to do on a call like this quickly, but I do want to go over the registration process today, as well as give you just sort of a quick overview of where you're going to find the applications once we have released them within the system. But we have worked out the only real glitchy issue, for lack of a better word, that we've found with the system is the registration process. Because this uses a third-party authenticator, it's fantastic. You can just use your North Dakota login if you already have one for an ND login account. However, it's very, very, very particular, and if you don't do the steps exactly right, it locks you out, and then it's very common and very frustrating. So please follow the announcements for the directions. You absolutely have to follow these before you just start trying to register and or get into web grants. It is very clear. You'll have to log in to confirm the account exists. Once you are logged in, it has an issue with, oh, I'm sorry, people are saying it's hard to hear. Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So once you're logged in, or once you are to the web grants login page, follow the announcements exactly as they are listed. Just go through it step by step. It does this funny thing where it says, oh, if you already have a North Dakota login that works with other apps, you don't need to create a new account. However, you do need to do steps 1, 2, and 3 because there's a security phone number required. It seems silly that it would allow you to register without requiring that, but it does. However, this application requires that. So I just need you to know that if you don't actually follow all of these steps, you're extremely frustrated and locked out of your account because it's actually authenticating back to the ND login. You do not have to register for a new ND login account. This would be an account that you use maybe for PERS or Game and Fish, anything like that. If you want to register for a new account, you're welcome to. You don't have to use that. Some people were saying they had concerns with using their personal accounts. That's okay. It does have the option, once you are registered, you can go and change it to your work email. The system is going to send you notifications throughout. You don't want to receive those on your personal email. We understand that. So follow the announcements. That's the biggest thing. Watch the video for the directions on how to navigate and where to find your application. I'm going to log in here quick as an external user and just show you briefly what your system is going to look like. So your navigation is here on the left. The video is going to go through all of that with you, as well as what to find under each of the different areas. The funding opportunity is going to be your opportunity to apply. Now, like Lori Matzke said, we're going to have that information out there as soon as possible. I'm hoping once we have it, we can even post a video that sort of walks you through generically how to do the application specifically. But as far as starting out, that draft manual, the video, and just getting registered can sometimes be a hiccup if the steps aren't all followed exactly right. So please make sure that you do that today. The sooner the better, so that we can work through any issues ahead of time, and then you'll be ready for once that application is posted. Is there any additional questions or anything on the web grants system? I know that that's super generic, but that attachment that you received in the meeting invite is really the best place to start, and then we can troubleshoot from there.
So a question came on that asked if you all could, if you could see the web grant screen. Hopefully you were able to see the screen as Rebecca was demonstrating. If not, we'll make sure to include that information on the COVID page, but it's a very nice landing page where it just gives you direct instructions on the steps to follow.
And we fully understand that the web grant is new to some districts. So again, there will be a document that will walk you through step by step, posted on our COVID site. We are also going to give you the name of multiple DPI staff who are very knowledgeable on the web grant system that will be available to support you as you go on and get registered. We have a couple more generic questions here, and then we're going to go on to our final segment on private school. Regarding the after-school program and preschool program that had to be ended, can you use the funds for the loss that you have there? Possibly. Again, it's going to depend on if they allow pre-award costs, but as long as they allow pre-award costs, then yes, you should be able to use your funds for that purpose. A question on receiving unemployment claims for substitute teachers. We will follow up on that question, and we will provide the answer in our Q&A as we are unsure at this time. If we are a Title I co-op, will estimated amounts be sent to both schools or just the fiscal agent? Just like we do with the Title I grants, once we post the estimated allocation this week within the next couple of days, yes, we will send a letter to both the fiscal agent and the cooperating school, and the letter will outline this is the fiscal agent's portion, this is the co-op school's portion. So yes, those letters will be forthcoming as well. And there's the last one on. We are one of the 16 schools that do not qualify for Title I funds. Do we still need to create an account on the web grant system, or will there be a different process for us? We will also use the web grants process for you as well. And so, yes, if you are one of the 16 small districts that don't qualify for Title I, please reference that document. Please get logged on and registered for the web grant system. And then we'll be providing information very soon as far as an estimated allocation for you 16 districts using our state level funds. Will private schools use the web grant process? Private schools can't apply for the funds directly. They need to work with their public school district. However, there are options within the web grant system to allow private schools viewing rights. And so, Rebecca, do you want to provide a little more information? Is that information outlined in the guidance, or is that information we will have to share with them coming up?
We may have to share that going forward with them. And I think that will have to be a district call, because the district the system allows them to change their permissions to show who has access to different ones. I see one of the questions is, can more than one person from each school log in? Absolutely. Yes, please do. And then when you watch the walkthrough video, it shows you how to give other users within your organization, school, access to that. So you can link users from an outside organization if the district would choose to do that, or if the district chooses to claim them like they do now and then track that information on their ledger. However, DPI decides going forward, what the policy on that will be. I'm just the web grants person, not the.
So we will provide some guidance very shortly here. If you're a private school, what we would recommend is communicate with your public school, have a conversation with them, call them up, and maybe request that you would like to have the viewing rights, and make that decision between the two of you, and we will be providing additional information as we go forward. I want to make sure we cover all of the information so we can go back to questions at the end, but at this time I'd like to turn it over to Ann Ellison to address some of those specific private school requirements.
Good morning, everyone. As Lori said, I'm Ann Ellison. I am in the Academic Support Office, and I'll be partnering with Shauna Greff on assisting with private school equitable services regulations during with the CARES Act funding. So you should have received a couple handouts, and I will walk through, beginning with the first one that has the green box. So inside the green box that should be on your screen right now as well, this is an excerpt from the actual CARES Act law that shows the language of the law and how assistance is being provided to non-public schools. Now, in the very first section, 18005, this is where it has the legality that equitable services are allowed. And you'll see there's two different section numbers referenced, 18002 and 18003. As Superintendent Basler had mentioned, 18002 is funding that goes directly through our North Dakota Office of the Governor. So equitable services as it pertains to that funding will be addressed through the governor's office. For the purpose of this information, we will be addressing the funding that flows through 18003. That money flows through DPI. That money we are calling the CARES Act relief funding, and that is the equitable services that we'll be talking about today. It's also important to note in that green box, letter B, the public control of funds. Just as with regular services from federal title programs, the control of funds continues to be with the public school district. So as Lori Matsky had mentioned earlier, private schools will not receive funds. Rather, they receive services from the LEA or the public school district. So connecting between both organizations is very important during this time. At the bottom of this sheet, there's a few resources I just wanted to make sure to highlight. The CARES Act relief funding page that exists, the equitable services page. Now this does pertain to the federal title program equitable service, but there's much information there that can also cross over and relate to the equitable services that must be provided to the CARES Act relief funding. I also want to recognize Stephanie Tukrow, our state ombudsman for non-public education. She too is going to be involved in this, and both Shauna and I will be working with staff on Q&A resources and documents. So between Shauna, staff, and myself, please reach out to us with questions. On the second page of this document, we have an anticipated timeline for the CARES Act relief funding, and in particular, as it relates to equitable services. As you look at this, I want you to see, like, yeah, it's a pretty aggressive timeline. Within like a 2 weeks time frame, there's a lot of asks and a lot of to-dos. We recognize that this is an aggressive timeline. We want to commit to you that if you and your community and your non-public schools and public school are able to meet this timeline, we will do everything in our power and in our work to be able to get applications and allocations to you as soon as possible, the first part of May. Now, I do want you to also recognize that if you do not meet the dates within this timeline, as an LEA, like, we'll still work with you, but your delays may cause allocation delays, especially if you have a non-public school in your community and district. All right, so a few things to highlight, and I have boxes so you can check them off, but in presenting, I recognize I probably should have put numbers. So the first box highlights that we at the department will be sending out correspondence to all schools and non-public schools regarding participation in the CARES Act relief funding. You're going to get the same information that we're sharing today, as well as the letter of intent form and worksheet G. Shauna, if you could please share that letter of intent form, that would be awesome. So this is a letter of intent form to participate in the CARES Act relief funding. If a non-public school wishes to receive those services of this federal funding source, then they would complete this and indicate yes in that center section with the check boxes. Now, say that you're a non-public school that has never participated in any of the federal programs before. That has no bearing on whether or not you participate now. it's your choice. Some districts in the past or some non-publics in the past may not have participated because of the Title I requirements that went along with this. Although this process uses a Title I formula to distribute funds, those Title I student requirements do not apply. So LEAs, districts, you must reach out to all non-public schools. And in some cases, you might have the first time ever a partnership between a non-public school and the district that wants to participate in CARES Act, even though maybe they've never been a title participant in the past. We're asking that non-publics get this information back to their public district by April 22nd. That gives the non-publics an idea of who they should be reaching out to for consultation meetings and planning budgets and so forth. We're then asking for a pretty quick turnaround for the districts to get it back to the department by April 24th. That will allow us to work a little bit deeper into what that equitable share allocation or share of services for the money will be. Okay, let's look back at the timeline. So bullet number 4 was April 24th. That's when we're asking for our public districts to get these letters of intent back to us. Now, as we've said before, we're using the Title I formula to determine those equitable shares. Usually they fall into 2 groups, either a district that is small in size and their Title I formula uses free and reduced lunch counts, and that's pretty much it. Those are our smaller districts. Some of our larger districts have to go through a targeting process. And to determine the non-public allocations, we are going to need to know the poverty of students in the non-public school and the attendance area data of non-public school students. So this is often referred to as Worksheet G, and many of you that are from large districts are familiar with that. If you had Worksheet Gs for your private schools already submitted for the 1920 school year, we will run with that information. However, if you have a newly participating non-public school, you will need to complete a new Worksheet G for that community school. We're asking for a quick turnaround of April 27th for you to work with the non-public school to get that attendance area data. We'll then pull that information together and release allocations, final allocations is our plan, by April 28th. That would be the end of the month of April, leaving early May for the district and LEA district and non-public to work together to complete the application, complete the consultation, to have documentation on what would be uses of funds or use for services for these funds. We also are working on a Q&A specific to equitable services for non-public schools. We have a draft of that in place, but we're also looking to receive some questions today, hopefully, that we can fill up with our Q&A. So please use that chat box to publish your questions. And I thank you for your time. And again, if you have questions, myself, Ann Ellefson, Shauna Greff, or Stephanie Tucrow in the department will be glad to assist you.
Okay, we have a few minutes here where we can take some additional questions. Lisa, have we had additional ones that we haven't answered yet?
For section 18002, is there funds available for private schools? I know that section 18003 has funds available through the LEA.
And you know what you're
Yes.
referring to?
So let's clarify, in both sections of the law, funds are not available. Services are available. But yes, equitable services apply to the funding through the governor's school in 18002, and equitable services are available in 18003. So the answer to the question is services are available through both funding sources.
Are colonies considered private school through CARES?
Colony schools are not considered private schools. They are considered a building within the public school district. So public school districts that have colony schools within their district boundaries should be reaching out to those colony schools as well.
If we have a problem, can we contact DPI staff?
Absolutely. We will be providing, there has been a team put together at DPI of about 15 staff that are specifically working on this supplemental funding. So we are going to post the list of those staff and which ones have expertise, let's say in the web grant system, private schools. So we will post information on our website today as far as who you can call if you have questions.
If we have a new private school participating, would we use the same month as those private schools who have already completed worksheet G for 1920? So we use September 2018 for the 1920 worksheet G. Do we use the same month of September 2018 for the new private school?
Anne, are you going to address that?
Yep. Yes. You'd use the same data sources that you used for your currently participating non-public schools for a newly participating CARES Act school.
Where do we find the pages? Where do we find the pages displayed today? So we will be posting this information on our website. So the private school forms and the web grants, Rebecca has a document that walks you through the whole process. So the information shared today will be posted on our CARES Act site on the COVID. So when you go to DPI's homepage, you'll see right at the top a COVID link that takes you into our COVID site, which has a variety of information, but right there at the top, there's a rectangular block that says COVID funding. And so the Q&A, the web grants, everything from today, the estimated allocations, everything pertaining to these CARES Act funds will be posted on that CARES Act site on the COVID site. Okay, that concludes our training today. Oh, one more question.
What are these services for private schools? Looks like Anne provided a website.
Okay, so that concludes our training today. Again, this is the first of many. So watch your email for additional constant contact notices to come out with additional trainings, especially once we have the LEA application ready. We will have a training. We'll walk you through it. Once we get the guidance, we'll be sharing additional information. So watch your email for additional guidance and more trainings to be coming up. This training was recorded, and so we will be providing that link if you'd like to re-listen to it or if you have friends who weren't able to participate today. So more information will be forthcoming. Thank you for participating today.